Hello and Happy New Year. I'm Stephanie with Archangel Education and Technology, and this year I am so excited to be sharing a brand new series with you. Teacher Tip Tuesdays will feature lesson and curriculum ideas that you can implement into your own classroom by downloading some of the resources that I will be providing to you. In my almost 20 years as a Catholic school educator, I have encountered many, many talented teachers and administrators who have provided me with their own ideas that have been really unique and able to be used in my classroom. And I want to share a lot of those ideas and how I use those ideas with you. And so I want to begin the year with my favorite subject, reading. And this was an idea that I came up with many, many years ago. And I know that a lot of you, when you're teaching reading, encourage your students to use sticky notes. And that is something that I really enjoyed using with my students because I felt like it helped them to make connections with the text. It also helped them to recall what they have read. I've used this strategy with very, very young students all the way up with high school students, and it's very effective. So, what I'm going to be providing you with is a bookmark. I've got a primary bookmark as well as an upper grades bookmark. And if you like either one of them or both of them, feel free to download the resource and use it as you see fit. Um, what I want to share with you is how I use this resource with younger students as well as older students. So, in the primary grades reading bookmark, I have reminders to my students. And so, um, this is things that when we teach reading, we have already gone over. And these are things that we want our students to do that we need to remind them to do as they read. Having a bookmark there will be a visual clue, a visual reminder of things that they can do to help them understand the text that they're encountering on a really deep level. So the first thing that I encourage my students to do is to look at the pictures. A lot of really amazing books have really amazing illustrators who have provided pictures to go along with the text. And for students that are not very strong readers, they can look at the pictures and help to figure out the story. For students that are strong readers, the pictures enhance the text. And I encourage the students to go through and look at the pictures even before they begin reading. We also talk about the use of punctuation. What does an exclamation mark mean? What does a question mark mean? How do our voices sound when we encounter a question mark? At the end of a text, when you encounter a question mark, our voices rise up, and that indicates that there's a question being asked. We also encounter commas. What does a comma mean? For my students who are young, a comma means a breath. And that's when they see a comma, they pause and take a breath before they continue reading. That really helps with their fluency, understanding the punctuation. So after they've read a story, I encourage them to go back and reread the story. You can't get everything from a text the first time you read it through. So I encourage students to go back and reread. See if there's a word that you don't know, and try to figure out using context clues what that word means. Or does that word look like a word that you do know? And can you try to figure out what that word means before I tell you what it means? One of my favorite examples of this is a student encountered the word slumber. And there was a picture on the page of the character, the little girl, going to sleep. And so the student, when she was reading, said the word sleep. And I said, "Whoa, hold on. That word has an M and a B in it, and an R. And sleep doesn't have those letters in it. So what could this word mean? So she sounded out the word slumber, and she said, what does slumber mean? And I said, well, why don't you tell me? Let's look at this page. What does slumber mean? And she was able to deduce that slumber looked like the word sleep, and the picture told her that the character was going to sleep. And so she figured out that the word slumber meant sleep. And so that was a really great connection that she made. Listen to yourself as you read. I love to use technology with this. I love to have students record themselves reading a story so that they can go back and hear their own fluency. And then also raise your hand for help if you're struggling. We don't want our students to be struggling so much with a book that they can't actually enjoy it. And that's a great time to make sure that a student is reading a book on their level, something that's a little bit challenging, but not too hard, and also not too easy. Once we get up into the upper grades, I use this bookmark idea as a resource for my students to use sticky notes as they're reading. And so I like to have my students always have a small little pad of sticky notes, not the giant ones, but the little ones that they can write little reminders and place it in the text. So when we go back to discuss certain pieces of a novel, they can easily be reminded of strategies or things that they want to remember or recall when they were reading. So when they encounter something that is shocking or surprising, they can use the word wow and just put wow with an exclamation point. This can be something that maybe it was a big twist in the book, something new that was found out, or even something that was just interesting to them that they might want to highlight when we discuss the book together. I always encourage them to put a heart if they loved a particular section. Some of them actually take this the other direction as well and use a frowny face if they didn't like a particular story. In one of the novels that we read, that when the character, the bad guy, did something particularly cruel to the main character, this was where some of my students actually put a frowny face because they didn't like the evil twist that the novel took. They enjoyed the story, but they didn't like that particular part. So that's an example of when they took something that I was implementing with them through the use of sticky notes and kind of created something on their own. I like for them to put LOL if they found something very funny, or a question mark if they wondered about something. If they feel something is an important part of the book, maybe it is the climax, maybe it's a rising action, maybe it's the conclusion, something that was particularly important, they always put a star there. Usually, when we would talk about those star parts, that's where the essays on some of my projects came from. I would ask them to further explain those what we called star parts, and they liked that they could go back in their novel and look and be able to talk through an essay about those really important parts. If they encountered new vocabulary, they would put a W. Uh, and finally, if they made a connection, whether it be a text to another text, they found something in common with a book that they've read in previous years, or even a text to real life. I have a situation where a student of mine who was not a huge fan of reading, um, he was able to make a connection because the main character had a dog and he had a dog. And so he was able to connect to that character. Even though the dog didn't necessarily play a large part in the story, it was something that he connected to and he held on to. And so that was a connection that he made. And so I would really encourage you to download and use these sticky note bookmarks. They're great reminders for students in the primary grades for strategies to use when reading, and in the older grades, how they can use those sticky notes as effective reading strategy tools. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week, and I look forward to seeing you next week for another Teacher Tip Tuesday.